tonight we're going to be looking at kind of what you should be doing in the season for FTC. Before we dig into that too much, couple of things to remember. You do need to be event ready, which means that you need to have your dashboard. You need to have your dashboard updated in FIRST Inspires. So if you do not have two coaches listed for your team with current email addresses and contact information, or if they are not youth protection screened, so YPP screening, or they have not completed the consent and release form, then your team is not ready to compete. And so you have to have those things completed before you can compete at a qualifier this season. The other thing I wanted to note about that, in your dashboard, you also need to make sure that all of your team members have completed their consent and release forms as well. Does everybody know where to find those, or would you like me to show you where that's at?
Please show me.
Okay. So if you log into your dashboard, so I will log into mine. Don't mind my 9 million teams that I will have in here. Hopefully this is going to show up. Okay. So when you log into your dashboard, you'll want to go to your contact options. You can manage your contacts here. This is just being very slow. So you can manage your contacts in this area. This is where you can do the express enrollment. So as long as you have both coaches listed, they've done the YPP and the consent and release, you can do an express enrollment so that your team members can join your team. You create a new invitation, you give it a title. It will provide a QR code and a link. You can set what expiration date you want, and then all the kids have to do is have their parents go to that link and register them for the team. Anybody who registers for the team will show up in your dashboard. Let's see. Will show up in your dashboard on this screen. So I have one student who is pending, so he's filled that out. I'll go ahead and approve the student, and then that takes care of that. Now, once they are approved, they'll show up underneath, and they'll have this green check mark that says consent and releases on record. When you go to a competition, you have to print this roster. So you'll go to this printable roster button, and it should, go to a roster, and you want to make sure that your lead coaches have their consent forms. All of your mentors will need to have their consent forms signed, and then all of your students. So any student that you have on your team does have to have a consent and release form on file. You have to print a copy of this and take it to competition with you. Questions on that?
Do both coaches have to be present at the qualifier?
So they do not. But both coaches have to have the consent and release and YPP screen and all that. You do only have to have one adult there. Having done this for a few years, I highly recommend having somebody else there to help you. just because it becomes a lot with the kids and keeping up with all of the schedules and food and all of that. But if you do have to do it by yourself, you are allowed to do that.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay, so we'll go back to the coach chat. So you do have to make sure your dashboard's up to date, make sure you bring those rosters. Now, a couple of other things, and if you've been to any of the previous coach chats, these are really great resources. Use them as needed. So if you have questions about things, please sign up for Slack. If you have not, you can ask questions, you can connect with other teams. And so we highly recommend that. Use the FTC Resource Hub. This is a FIRST Chesapeake website. And so we have a lot of good information there. So just wanted to point that out again. All right, so let's move into team logistics. So hopefully all of you have started having regular meetings or practices with your students to start preparing them for the competition. If you haven't, you definitely need to get started on that so that you're ready for your first competition. Couple of things as new coaches or coaches that have, this is maybe year 2 or 3, maybe it's your very first year. You need to think about teaching the kids the skills that they need more than winning at this point. So right now, your team focus should be mostly on learning and making sure that the students are gaining the skills that they need. It's really important to celebrate their improvements and their accomplishments and their growth over the season. Sometimes we can focus too much on, oh, we want to win, when really it's about the students gaining the skills that they need so that they can be successful, and thinking about winning in the future years. This year is about growing and becoming a strong and sustainable team. So when you're looking at those meeting times, you can kind of take 2 approaches to this. You can have students specialize, which means they would pick one area to focus on. So maybe they would be on the building team, or maybe they'd be on the coding team or the outreach team. And so the students learn all about that and don't really get to experience all of the different roles that are on the team. The other approach to that is to kind of generalize, where everyone rotates through the different areas, the different aspects of the team, and learns a little bit about each thing. So there's positives and negatives to both. If you're specializing, that means one person is learning. So you're probably going to have a faster output. The negative to that is that not all of the students are exposed to every single area. And so that kind of leaves them isolated and not really knowing what's going on anywhere else. With generalizing it, where everybody learns, this actually takes a lot more time to do. So it's a lot slower at first. But what's great about it is that over time, you're going to have a stronger, more resilient team because you have all kinds of kids who know how to do every single thing on your team. And so if somebody is sick and isn't there, or is somewhere else out of town on vacation, then you have other people who can pick up the slack in that, and you can continue to make progress. Most of the time, you'll probably have small groups of students. So you're probably going to want maybe 2 to 3 kids, depending on how many kids you have on your team. If you only have 3 kids on your team, obviously you would not do groups of 3. But 2 to 3 kids in a small group, maybe they are your building team. And so you want to set them up each day with a goal for the day, and have them work through, come up with their plan on how they're going to do that. And hopefully by the end of that practice or meeting, they're going to have that task accomplished. You could put this on like a whiteboard if you're in like a classroom setting, or you have a whiteboard available, you can do that. There's also a lot of software out there that you can also use. Some of it's free, some of it's not, but you could use like Monday.com is an example of like a workflow software to keep them on task, so that each kid knows where they're at, what they're doing, and their goals for that day. If you're doing shorter meetings, you might want to do like a goal for the week. So if you're like only meeting for 45 minutes in a classroom setting or something like that, you may want to do goals for the week instead of goals for the day. Questions so far about setting up your meetings before I continue? Okay. So you want to make sure that your team is cohesive. So one of the ways you can do that is by setting team norms. Typically, you'd have the kids talk about what they expect from their teammates, and then make a list and vote on them, so that everybody knows what the expectations are. Some examples might be that everybody shows up on time, or that cell phones are put away, or that everybody's wearing safety glasses, which is an important part of this. If somebody gets stuck, that they make sure they ask for help instead of staying stuck on the same task for weeks at a time. It's also important to do a weekly check-in with each of your different areas of the team. Ask them what went well that week. Ask them what they need to work on next. What are they going to be working on the next week? And then also ask them if they're stuck on something, so that you are aware of where every single area of your team is at and what you need to do to help them to continue moving forward and making progress. It's also really helpful if you have newer students to pair them with students who are experienced, at least for a couple of weeks. That way they can get an understanding of how the team works, what's expected of them, and how to complete some of those basic tasks. I also like to throw in here to remember to teach them about gracious professionalism and cooperation. Those are key aspects of FIRST. And so we want to use those in our practices as well as at competitions. It's a lot easier for the kids to remember at competition if they're just used to being graciously professional all the time. So I always like to remind the students to help other students out. If they have at the competition, if somebody is struggling with maybe they're autonomous, or they have a part that broke and they don't have any spares, it's always important to remind them that we can share what we have, and to just work well together. We're all there for success, and we all want everybody to be successful and to perform at their top level. Okay. So when you are at practice, I always say practice the way you plan to perform. So you want to have safety glasses on. You want to practice being safe at practice, so that when you get to competition, it's not something completely brand new. When you run practice matches, it's important to set your timer, give them like 2 minutes of drive time. Don't coach them during the 2 minutes. Let them drive. Coach them in between matches, just like you would at competition. So have those 2-minute field cycles. Make sure everybody's in their role. So if your drive team is in a particular location, it's also important to practice on the red side and on the blue side. That way you're not like thrown for a loop if you're a different color than what you're used to practicing as. You should have like some pre-match checklists. So what things should they be looking at Are the batteries charged? Is everything tightened? And so on. If they have issues during the match, you should document that so that you can fix that before your actual competition. So it's really important to do those things at practice so that the students are used to doing all of those when they actually get to competition. Another important aspect when we're talking about your team logistics is the attitude of the kids and of the coaches. Remember that you should be praising them for their process and for learning and for growing more than whether or not they're the top performing team points wise. Focus on the things that you can control, things like how much effort you're putting in or being respectful to each other. As far as the role of the coach, in FTC, the coach basically is there as like a guide, and the student should be doing the work. So you can show the students how to program something, but it should be the students who are actually doing the programming. They should serve more as a guide instead. They're not participating in FTC. Or if a student needs to know how to put a motor on a wheel or something, you can show them how to do that, but then the student needs to do that on the other wheels. So coach acts more as a guide here. The students are the ones who are actually doing the work. They should be the ones who are making the decisions. So what is their strategy? How do they want to score points? Who's going to be on the drive team? Who's going to be the human player? So on. Students are going to inevitably get stuck at some point. It's highly encouraged to have the kids try to figure out solutions on their own before coming to you. Now, not for long periods of time, but it is really good for them to practice some resilience and to practice those research skills and see what they can come up with. I wouldn't let them struggle for a long time because you don't want to waste time either. You want to keep making progress, but it is good as long as it's a productive struggle. That's a good thing for them to grow and to learn over this season. If needed, the coach or mentor can step in if they're to a point where they're like, I have no idea what I should be doing. So a good weekly cadence to kind of run with your team is whatever day you're meeting the first day of the week to kind of give a couple minute overview of what was accomplished the week before, and then maybe pick 3 priorities depending on size of team, maybe 3 priorities for the week. So maybe you want to make sure that the input is completely finished, or your output is finished, your chassis is made, or maybe you want to focus on outreach. Okay? So you should pick a couple of things to focus on for the week, and then set goals for that. In the middle of the week, it's really important to check in with each of your different areas of the team, see how they're doing, see if they're stuck on anything, kind of do like a midweek check-in. And then once you have your robot finished, at the last meeting of the week, you should run qualifier type scrimmages. That way you have an idea of how that works and your team gets used to driving for the 2-minute time period. This also gives you a really good idea of how many points you can score and where you can make improvements. Okay. So remember, as you're designing your meetings and practices, you want to make sure that the students are learning and that they're growing as a team. Providing that structure will help your team continue to move forward throughout your season and into the following years to come. Okay. Any questions on team logistics, what you should be doing at practice, expectations for the students? Okay. So then we're going to talk just a little bit about preparing for the competition. The entire next coach chat is on the details of this. So we'll get into basically the nitty-gritty of what you actually need to have there and what you need to do very specifically. But for now, the first thing we're going to talk about is what to expect when you go to competition. So there's kind of a flow to the day. The first thing is to check in and make sure that you have that printed copy of your roster, which I showed you earlier. That's in your dashboard. Please make sure it is printed. You are required to have it printed. You have to turn that in when you check in. New this year also in that process is that you do have to have a student present in the building when you do check in. So that's kind of a new thing. Anybody who's been coaching more than this year, you do have to have a student. That is a first requirement. Then you'll do a hardware and field inspection, robot inspection. So they'll check to make sure that you're running the correct software. They will check to make sure that your robot fits in the correct size limits. So you will have to go through an inspection. If you go to your competition manual, there will be inspection checklists and things available through FIRST. I highly recommend going through those and making sure that your robot meets all of those requirements before you go to your competition. Because you will be inspected. They'll also make you run your robot on the field to make sure that it's not going to cause any damage and that it meets all of those requirements. You will also have a judging session. You can prepare a 5-minute presentation, and then there will be 5 minutes of questions and answers. Along with the judging, the judges will also be walking around during the competition in the pit area. And they'll do pit interviews after all of the judging sessions are completed in the morning. There is a driver meeting that every team has to have at least one member of their drive team. I recommend sending all of them so that they all know what is expected of them. But every team is required to have at least one member of the drive team present at that meeting, where the head ref will go over all of the expectations for the qualification, answer any questions that the kids have, and make sure that everybody is set to start driving. There will be an opening ceremony after the driver meeting. All teams are encouraged to attend that. During this time, the pits need to be really quiet, and there should not be very many people in the pit. So the teams are expected to attend that opening ceremony. And then after that is when the qualification matches start. At all of the regular season qualifiers, there will be 5 qualification matches. After those are all completed, will be alliance selection, and then the playoff matches and awards. Any questions on kind of the run of things, how that works throughout the day? Okay. At the next coach chat, we'll talk like details about each one of those things so that you know how to prepare your kids for their judging sessions. Couple of other things in the pit area: safety glasses, closed toe and heel shoes. So you can't wear like Crocs, for example. You have to have completely enclosed shoes and safety glasses in the pit area. Make sure that you keep the aisleways clear, so make sure whoever is in your pit fits within your pit. You do not want people like out in the aisleway, preventing other teams from being able to get through. So one of the things that I do to help during competition day is I assign my team members different jobs for the day. This makes sure that everybody has something to do, and it also keeps a big herd of people out of the pit area. So you do want to designate somebody to be in your pit. That way you have someone there for those pit interviews. So I call that my pit lead. You'll want somebody who's going to be a runner to make sure that your team is getting to where they need to be, and that if you need different things, you can send them to go grab whatever you need. You will have your drive team. So the drive team will have buttons and make sure that they know that they are on the drive team. You should have people who are scouting out in the and watching those matches. And then I always like to assign somebody as the safety captain, who's making sure that everybody who has long hair has it pulled back, or that they're wearing their safety glasses where they're supposed to be, because a lot of them forget to put their safety glasses back on after they exit the pit area. And so it's really important to have somebody in charge of making sure that people are following all those guidelines. Okay. If you have not already read the competition manual, you want to make sure that you do that. So I provided the link here. You want to make sure that you read the manual, and also check your the Q&A part where they do all of the updates. If you noticed, the last time this was updated was October 9th. So this is not going to be the same manual that was released, which means some things have changed, and it's really important to make sure that you're keeping up with those changes, so that as you're building and designing your robot, you make sure that it continues to meet all of the requirements throughout the season. I have one student who it is their job to read that every single week, and to make sure that they share those changes with the other students on the team. Questions about that? Okay. All right. So just to reiterate, make sure that the students are being safe in the pits and on the fields. They do have to wear safety glasses. One important thing to note here is that when you have visitors in your pit, they are also required to wear safety glasses. So it is really important to bring enough safety glasses to the qualifiers, that when parents come to visit the pit area, that you can provide them with a pair of safety glasses, or make sure that you tell them, hey, bring your own safety glasses, because they are required for anybody who is in the pit area. Also remember to follow gracious professionalism inside of the pits. If you see something that is hazardous, or if a student sees something that is hazardous, make sure that they report it. And if they see one of their neighbors having trouble or needing something, they can always help them out. The event rules and regulations. So keep in mind to read that competition manual. During check-in, you do have to have your consent and release roster. Your robot has to meet the inspection requirements, so it has to fit inside that 18-inch cube. Your software has to be specific versions, and so on. So read that manual, make sure you know those requirements for your robot. For judging, if you are going to be making a portfolio, make sure that you have it the correct length. It is only allowed to be, I believe, 15 pages. So make sure that it is the correct length. Do not add extra pages into the back of it. Make sure that your students are the ones who are preparing their presentations and are able to answer the questions. As far as lodging and transportation and food, if your team is traveling a longer distance for your qualification, you want to get on Google Maps or some other map source and figure out where that venue is located, and make sure you find accommodations that are within the driving distance of that you would like to be. If you're driving the morning of, plan that out in advance. You want to try to aim to be there like with at least a 30-minute arrival buffer. That way, if there's extra traffic or something happens along the way, that you have that little bit of time where you can still get there in time to check in. All of the events are on FIRST Chesapeake's website. So I'll pull that up really fast and show you where you can find them. So if you go to firstchesapeake.org and you go to programs, and then you're going to want to go to the FTC event list. And when you click on that, you're going to see the different event pages. So you can find one that you are attending. So let's say you're attending Richmond Qualifier 1. This page is dedicated to the information that applies to the Richmond Qualifier 1 event. So here at the top, you can click where it says Teams, and this will take you to First Inspire's website, where you can then see which teams are competing at that event with you. You can also click on matches, and it will go to your qualification match schedule. Now, because this is not already started, there isn't a match schedule that gets scheduled that day. So this will not be available until matches are released, which will not be until just shortly before the qualification matches start. You can check rankings, awards, and if you want to watch, this links to the YouTube page where you can watch that. This gives you the address of where the event is going to be happening. So this is your venue. I highly recommend putting this into Google Maps or a similar service and figuring out how long it's going to take you to get there, how you need to get there, and do that prior to the day of the competition. That way you're prepared and ready to go. The coming soon is going to be like parking information and any other information that the event venues provide to us. When they provide lunch and concession information, that will be available. If they're doing a team pre-order, that will be available on here. This is information for the coaches. So you should find your events, your qualifiers, and make sure you read the information for coaching. This is information about judging at that event. So I highly recommend reading that. This is your event schedule. Read this carefully. We do have a couple of events that are starting on a delayed start, and so it's really important that you read this information and make sure that your team arrives at the correct time to the venue. This gives you information about pits and inspection, health and safety, and then you can also see how many teams are advancing from each qualifier and the formula that we used to determine that. Any questions about the event pages? Okay. A couple of other things. As far as like meals and hydration, a lot of the events will have pre-order lunches. You can also have a parent or another mentor who wants to be in charge of making sure that the kids have lunch, and the coaches. You can do that. Most of the venues are also going to have a concession stand. So you can kind of look at what your options are. And if you choose not to use anything that's provided by the venue, you can always plan your own lunch. You just want to make sure that on this, on the event page, that it tells you where it says like lunch. Some venues are really particular about where teams eat their food. And so you want to just make sure that you pay attention to that and that you're following those guidelines from the venue. I suggest packing water and some snacks for the students, or telling all of the kids, hey, bring yourself some water and a snack, because they will get hungry. They're a bunch of teenagers and they are starving all the time. So they will get hungry. They will want water. They'll want food. You can also have them bring money to just buy that from the concession stand. That's really up to you. But I highly recommend making sure that they have food available to them throughout the day. And then if you click on the link here, this is going to take you to kind of a packing list. These are the things that you will want to bring with you to the competition. And so you will need a table for your pit. This is new this year. And if you haven't seen it, it has been this information has gone out through our newsletters. It's on our website. But you do have to bring your own table this year. And if you would like chairs, you will need to bring your own chairs. So that's new this year. Tables will not be provided by the venue. You should be bringing 2 copies of your portfolio, a display for your pit area for when the judges are in your pit talking, that the students who are answering the questions can kind of refer to them. Extension cords and power strips are really important. The power should be relatively close to where your pit area is, but you may need to extend that and have plenty of outlets to plug into, so make sure you bring those power strips for that. You'll want to bring extra parts, your toolboxes, your controllers and controller hubs. If you're using phones, make sure you have them, and make sure that all of your software is up to date. Again, make sure that you have your copy of your roster with those check marks next to each person's name. That includes mentors, coaches, and students. So they all have to have that green check mark when you are turning in those rosters. So now we have a little bit of time for questions. Does anybody have any questions? So if you have one, you can unmute yourself, or you can drop it in the chat, whatever you prefer. Okay. Well, if nobody has any questions, then we'll be done about 20 minutes early. Our next coach chat, just if you want to go ahead and mark your calendars, is going to be on November 11th, same time. So if during that meeting, we're going to talk a whole lot about like what you should be doing for judging. How do you prepare your students for those judging sessions? And some all those things where I talked about what do you expect, we'll go through very specifically what is alliance selection. How does that even work? So we'll go through all of those details about what you need to do to make sure your team is competition ready. So hope everybody comes. That's November 11th. And thank you. I'm glad it was helpful. And if you think of any questions later on, please email me. I'll drop my email in the chat because I would love to help you if you need help with anything.
Actually, I do have a question.
Yeah.
So we did FIRST Lego Week and we did big displays. What type of displays are you talking about for the pit area? Are they like the big kind of like science fair displays, or what are you looking for?
So that really depends on what your team wants to do. So let me find the correct screen. In the presentation, here we go. Found the right screen again. So in the presentation, this is an example. You can see this this pit here. So that's an example of what you can do. So it doesn't have to be that elaborate. Some teams just make like one large poster. Some teams will do just like the poster board. So it's really what your team wants to do.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's just really important to have something that the kids can like look at and be like, oh yeah, for outreach we did this, 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 and this year. It's mainly to help them be able to talk about what they've done during the season.
Okay, thank you so much. That makes sense.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. Marion, you can get the recording. So let me drop the link. Give me just a second. Where you can find the recording. It won't be available until tomorrow morning, but I will drop it in this folder so that it is available to you. So let me find the folder. So that is where you can find the recording. So I just put that in the chat too for anybody who wants to watch that or maybe share it with another coach. It'll probably be like 8 or 9 tomorrow morning by the time I get it dropped into that folder, but it will be available to you. Any other questions? And you're welcome. Okay, well, thank you all for joining me tonight, and I look forward to seeing you next month to make sure that your team is ready to compete. Have a good evening.